Hey, Gar, I got a question for you.
Yeah, okay. What's up, Goyle?
Why are graveyards always so noisy?
I don't know, why?
Because of all the coughing.
Oh,
Gargoyles. What are you gonna do? Hi, welcome back to Absinthe and Ink. I'm MJ, and in this video I want to talk about Gothic literature. Now, Gothic literature is all about invoking a sense of suspense and dread and deeply profound emotions, like when you have to go back to work after a vacation. And the Gothic does this by taking all of our anxieties, our fears, our apprehensions, and rolling it up into a big ball, magnifying it times 100, and throwing it back at us, and increasing all of our anxieties, fears, and apprehensions. But as humans, we seem to love this shit because the Gothic novel has only become more popular over time. Now, the Gothic novel stepped out of the dark shadows of England during the late 18th century. And this was a time of some major drama. I mean, you had drama everywhere. You had social drama, you had political drama, and you had religious drama. But you also had the American Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, and the French Revolution. It seemed like everybody was revolting against everything. And this includes literature that was moving away from the Enlightenment towards Romanticism. Now, while the Enlightenment emphasized reason and rationality and scientific progress, the Gothic novel stormed in like an angry teenager looking for attention by being emotional, irrational, and obsessed with the dark inner nature of humans, and also probably listening to Joy Division and The Cure. Now, The Castle of Otranto by Horace Walpole was published in 1764, and this is what is usually accepted as the first Gothic novel. Now, this was a novel that was full of crumbling castles in a medieval setting with ghostly apparitions, and one of the most terrifying things to ever happen in any literature ever, a giant helmet. Now, Walpole was followed shortly thereafter by Anne Radcliffe in 1794 with The Mysteries of Udolpho, and shortly after that in 1796 by Matthew Lewis's The Monk. Now, if you haven't read The Monk and you like Gothic novels that are set in medieval monasteries and have religious hypocrisy and moral decay and, all those fun things, then you will love The Monk. It is a bonkers book. As a matter of fact, it's so crazy that shortly after it was published, Matthew Lewis admitted to actually being embarrassed by having written it. And of course, you have Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is arguably one of the most influential novels of Gothic literature, along with Bram Stoker's Dracula. And it's the women who have written the most popular Gothic novels. You have, in addition to Mary Shelley and Anne Radcliffe, you have Charlotte Dacre, Elizabeth Gaskell, Mary Elizabeth Braddon, and, of course, the Bronte sisters, all flexing that literary girl power. Yeah. Now, one of the most important elements to Gothic literature is the setting. Now, you have some novels where you have a medieval setting, which kind of grabs you with shadowy fingers from the past, pulling you back to a place that is unknown and unfamiliar. But the settings just aren't castles and haunted convents. Nature also plays a big role in the setting of the Gothic. You have things like storms and fog and even snow. And in addition to that, you also have the landscape. You have things like mountains and, of course, dark, shadowy forests. And the reason that setting is so important is because it often reflects or mirrors the psychological mindset of the characters. For example, Cathy and Heathcliff in Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. It's set on the moors, which are wild and untamed, very much like Cathy and Heathcliff themselves. Now, while the moors are magnificent and alluring and impressive, they're also give a sense of isolation and almost abandonment. And this gives the reader the sense of the sublime. Now, the sublime is a term that gets batted around a lot to mean something that's magnificent or impressive. And it can mean that. But it's often misused to describe something that is extremely beautiful. And where beauty comes from a place of pleasure, the sublime comes from a much darker place. It's a place that inspires awe and terror. And as a matter of fact, in the literary sense, it's in between awe and terror where the sublime lives. Now, in Frankenstein, Victor Frankenstein experiences the sublime in a couple of places throughout the narrative. He experiences it when he's younger, when he describes watching a violent and terrible thunderstorm with curiosity and delight. Now, if Victor Frankenstein had been on the open moors instead of inside his house when he experienced this, I don't know if he would have been quite as curious and delighted. Now, later on in the novel, Victor Frankenstein experiences the sublime in what Edmund Burke would refer to as the form of astonishment when he sees his creation come to life. Now, Edmund Burke describes the state of astonishment as that state of the soul in which all its motions are suspended with some degree of horror. And some of the characters in Gothic literature are some of the most complex in any genre. They're usually in some kind of conflict with themselves, whether it's over some kind of trauma or remorse or guilt. And these characters are usually intelligent and arrogant, and they're also very alluring. And these characters are often tagged as being Byronic. Now, Byronic characters are dark and moody and mysterious. And you have characters like the Brontes. They were the grand masters of the Byronic character, with individuals like Mr. Rochester and, of course, Heathcliff. Now, later on, you have a couple of other characters entering this in the form of Oscar Wilde's picture of Dorian Gray. Dorian Gray is a Byronic character. And another character that you may not have thought of is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is also a Byronic character. Byron actually had his own Byronic characters in the form of Manfred and Childe Harold. While Byronic characters are usually masculine, doesn't mean that feminine characters can't have Byronistic qualities. They can. If you look at Jane Eyre and Catherine Earnshaw, they are fiercely independent and rebellious. And while Byronic characters tend to fall into that morally gray area, I'm not sure if Jane and Catherine actually qualify as being Byronistic, even though they have those qualities. So, I'm not sure. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And then you have one of my favorite elements of the Gothic, and that's the uncanny. Now, you may have heard someone refer to something like, wow, your sister's resemblance to that actress is uncanny. But in the literary sense, the uncanny means something much darker. Now, in the literary sense, the uncanny is something that was once familiar, has now become unfamiliar in a disturbing way. So, for example, say you have a beautiful oak tree that grows in your yard, and every day you walk past it and you admire it for its beauty. But you walk past it one day and you see a face growing out of the bark. So now that oak tree has become unfamiliar in a disturbing way. It's become uncanny. Now, a good example of the uncanny would be the novels of Stephen King. Now, Stephen King isn't Gothic, but if you think about his novels like Christine and Cujo and It, he takes the unfamiliar and twists and warps it into something disturbingly unfamiliar, and that's one of the reasons why his stories are so scary. Now, another good example of this is Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher. Now, one of the reasons this story is so terrifying is due to the uncanniness of Roderick Usher. Now, this is Poe creates a sense of the uncanny through the narrator, who talks about how his friend has changed. The narrator explains that the increase in strangeness of his face had caused so great a change that I almost did not know him. The horrible white of his skin and the strange light in his eyes surprised me and even made me afraid. I could not, even with an effort, see in my friend the appearance of a simple human being. And of course, you have to have an element of the supernatural. And regardless of the form, the supernatural disrupts the familiar. You have the sense of whether or not you believe in a spirit otherworld and reality, and this creates kind of a conflict because the supernatural, it blurs that line between, well, the supernatural and reality. And this makes it complicated to be able to differentiate between what is real and what isn't. Now, a really good example of this is Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Hound of the Baskervilles. Now, in the story, the characters all believe in this ancient curse that's come back to haunt them in the form of a giant hound from hell. But as it turns out, the hound from hell is a very big, but also very real dog. And on the other hand, you have Ebenezer Scrooge, who refuses to believe that Marley is actually a real ghost and tells him that he's nothing but an undigested bit of beef. Now, while that is quite the burn, Scrooge soon finds out that Marley is, in fact, a real ghost. Now, one of the, I guess I should say, my favorite Gothic ghost story is from a writer named J. Mead Faulkner. And in 1895, he published a story called The Lost Stradivarius. And this has everything your little Gothic heart could desire. It has a Gothic setting. It has the supernatural. It has the uncanny. It has the sublime in the form of music, which is really interesting. And of course, it also has, well, ghosts. Now, this is a fairly short story. It's about 100 pages, give or take. But it is one of my favorite stories of all time. And if you'd like to read it, I'm going to put a link down below where you can do that for free. Like I said, it's fairly short and it probably won't take you more than an hour or two. But I promise you, it will be time well spent. Now, as I said earlier in this video, the Gothic's popularity has only increased over time, and it's actually expanded into some subgenres. You have things like Gothic horror, Gothic fantasy, Gothic romance, and you have one of my favorites, which is dark academia. And I think the reason that the Gothic novel has the staying power that it does is because it resonates with us. It allows us to explore the dark, scarier parts of human nature, all from the safety of our own coffins. I mean, chair. Now, I'd love it if you'd let me know your thoughts on the Gothic and tell me what some of your favorite stories are, because I'm always looking for a good Gothic read. So, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on Absinthe and Ink.